Detective Flores, good morning.
Morning.
Before we get into a series of questions I'm going to ask you about regarding how you establish probable cause in this case, I want to really just pick up where you left off with these photographs. You were asked by the prosecutor about 14A, which was the picture that appeared, as to use your words, appears to be holding a gun, where Mr. Mayers appears to be holding a gun. Do you recall that?
Correct.
Okay. Now that gun or whatever it was not recovered, correct?
Correct.
It was not tested, obviously.
It wasn't recovered, it wasn't tested.
So you're not sure if that's an operable gun or a non-operable gun or whatever it is.
I don't have it tested to tell you.
Right, so you're not sure if it's operable or inoperable or even a weapon, correct?
Without having it, I can't tell you whether it's operable.
Right. Okay, so you were assigned to this case on November 9th, 2021, along with Detective Camacho and Detective Menifee.
That's correct.
And as a detective assigned to this case, you're familiar with all the police reports generated in connection to this case?
Correct.
Okay. And you know, because the police reports are relied on at hearings like this and trials down the road, as a case detective, you want to ensure that those reports are as complete and accurate as possible.
That's correct.
And as a case detective, you spoke to other officers with knowledge about this case as part of your investigation.
Yes.
And you also retrieved and reviewed video recordings pertaining to this incident. Obviously, you just saw them.
That's correct.
Vista Del Mar, 1616 Vista Del Mar, and also 6200 Hollywood Boulevard, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you retrieved those, the Vista Del Mar, I think, on November 9th, 2021, and the Hollywood Boulevard one on November 18th.
Correct.
On November 8th, law enforcement received two 9mm Luger shell casings from Terell, Ephron.
Correct.
And at that time, Mr. Ephron claimed to Officer Anderson that Mr. Mayer shot 3 or 4 rounds at him.
The object is to multiple layers of hearsay, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. Do you know what Mr. Ephron claimed initially when he spoke to the police about how many rounds were shot at him?
An object as to lacks foundation and again calls for multiple levels
Your
of
Honor,
hearsay.
he's the,
Sustained.
okay, he's the detective testifying.
Right, but he can only testify to 1 layer of hearsay via Prop 115.
Okay. Did you ever speak to Mr. Ephron, you, about how many shots he claimed were fired at him?
I did.
And what did he say?
I don't recall exactly, but I believe it was 3 or 4.
3 or 4, okay. And he also claimed that after this altercation with Mr. Mayers, he, Mr. Ephron, returned to the scene about an hour later and picked up 2 shell casings from the sidewalk area.
I believe it was a sidewalk or street area as he described it. Yes.
Right where the incident was, right?
Roughly as he described it.
Okay. And you know that Mr. Ephron made this report in person to the LAPD on approximately 7:20 p.m. on November 8th, 2021.
Objection, the same objection calls for multiple levels of hearsay.
It's not on that?
The court's allowing it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on that same day, November 8th, 2021, law enforcement asked if latent print unit could conduct a fingerprint analysis of the casings provided by Mr. Ephron.
Objection, lacks foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained. Rephrase your question, please.
Sure. Did you or any of your brother or sister officers in this case request latent prints be done on those shell casings?
Same objection based on a former question.
Court's allowing it.
I did not. I'm not sure if we requested prints or the casings just to be tested or compared.
Okay. Well, you're familiar with all the reports in this case, right?
Yes.
And you're here testifying at the preliminary hearing on behalf of the LAPD?
Correct.
Okay. Why don't you take a look at, you know what, I'm gonna, Your Honor, just to speed this along. Wait, look, next book. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'm gonna just provide the detective with a book of the exhibits I may use during this examination, so he could just have it in front of him, okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Do you
Detective,
have a copy? He's taking his own.
these are all the reports. I'll identify it.
What time?
16. He actually does have a copy, yeah.
Thank you.
Just go to tab 16. Take a look at that report. First of all, you're familiar with that report?
Yes,
Okay. And does that report indicate that the shell casing was sent off for latent print analysis?
yes, it does.
Okay. And when they're submitted, or just to be clear, when something is submitted for latent print analysis, detective, that's to determine if there are fingerprints on it, right?
Yes,
And those shell casings were actually submitted to the fingerprint analysis lab about 2 weeks later on November 23rd,
correct.
right? And you're familiar that fingerprints can typically be left behind on bullets when they are touched and loaded into a firearm?
They can be.
Cap-
Well, I'm going to object as to lax foundation and calls for an expert testimony. Your Honor.
I don't understand what lax foundation mean, and expert testimony. He's a police detective, and he's being asked about whether prints can be left on a bullet casing.
Your Honor, I think the objections that I make have been simply stated as the grounds for the objection as the court has requested, and I've asked the court to admonish counsel not to yell at me after I make my
Oh,
objections.
Your Honor, I don't think I yelled at him. Let's not be sensitive. I'm not yelling, I'm just responding to his objection.
Thank you, but there are no speaking objections, and if you wish to be heard after there's an objection, ask the court, please. The court's going to allow it. Based on his years of experience as a homicide detective, I think he can opine as to whether or not their prints may be left behind on shell casings. So what was your answer?
Possibly, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. In any event, the latent print unit completed its fingerprint analysis on November 23rd, 2021.
Correct.
Okay, and basically, after examining the casings provided by Mr. Ephron, law enforcement lifted 0 fingerprints off of them.
That's correct.
Okay, so there were no fingerprints of anyone on those shell casings.
Nothing usable.
Okay. I'd like to ask you about the DNA in this case. You secured a search warrant to obtain DNA swabs from Mr. Mayers.
Correct.
And in order to obtain that search warrant, you was sworn to a judge that DNA from Mr. Mayers was, quote, clearly necessary for analysis for probable cause purposes as well as evidentiary purposes.
Correct.
Okay. And after getting the search warrant for Mr. Mayers' DNA, you took samples of his saliva with 2 swabs on April 20th, 2022.
Yes, there's swabs taken.
Okay. And by the way, it's Exhibit 17 if you just want to look along. Okay. And although you affirmed to a judge that DNA was clearly necessary as part of this case, law enforcement never submitted anything for DNA analysis, right?
Correct.
Well, why would you swear to a court that it was clearly necessary to have his DNA and then not submit anything for DNA analysis?
Well, we request a reference to have in the event that at some portion of our investigation that there is a item that's recovered, i.e. the gun or some other evidence related to the case that we can at that point compare to. So it's with the understanding that we have the potential to recover some item of evidence that we would at some point request a comparison against.
So it was possible, you mean?
Correct.
Okay, so, I mean, you would agree that's a little different than telling a court that it was absolutely necessary for analysis for probable cause in this case.
Objection argumentative.
Well, it's not relevant.
Okay. Anyway, to be clear, law enforcement submitted nothing for DNA analysis in this case.
Nothing at this point.
Okay. Would you say nothing at this time?
Nothing at this point, sir.
You don't plan on doing it anytime soon, do you?
I can't foresee the
Objection calls for
future.
discovery.
Sustained.
The alleged altercation between Mr. Ephron and Mr. Mayers took place on November 6th, 2021, around 10:17 p.m.
Correct.
And in particular, Mr. Ephron claimed he was shot at the corner of Vista Del Mar and Selma.
Yes.
And according to the video footage obtained from 1616 Vista Del Mar, the physical altercation lasted about 25 seconds.
We're Roughly, thereabouts.
Okay. And again, it's section report number, or exhibit number 22, if you need to see it, but in any event, it's roughly 25 seconds, correct?
Roughly from my memory.
Okay. And you were here, obviously, on November 8th, when the prosecutor was sort of asking questions of the witness and making statements in court. You were here the last court appearance, correct?
I was in and out of courtroom, but I was here.
Okay. Were you here when the prosecutor stipulated that Mr. Ephron returned to the scene of the altercation at 11:09 p.m., 52 minutes after leaving it?
Your Honor, if I could just clarify, that stipulation was later withdrawn, so.
That's not my question. My question was, he here when he agreed to the stipulation?
Again, I was in the middle of making my objection
You
when
were.
counsel spoke over me. The stipulation was later withdrawn, so there was no stipulation. So I would object to the form of the question, lacking foundation.
Well, it doesn't lack foundation, but if you withdrew the stipulation, then rephrase your question, please.
Okay.
Maybe the
Yeah.
withdrawn stipulation.
Your Honor, that's another issue. I don't know if a stipulation, once it's acknowledged and entered into evidence, can be withdrawn. I've researched that to the nines, and I can't find a thing that allows for a withdrawing of a stipulation that was already been entered into, once it's entered into. But that's fine for now. I could rephrase the question.
Thank you.
Were you here when the prosecutor initially stipulated that Mr. Ephron returned to the scene of the altercation at 11:09 p.m., 52 minutes after leaving it, before he subsequently tried to withdraw the stipulation? Were you here when he first stipulated to it?
And I would object that it's irrelevant.
Well, there was a stipulation, so, and it was withdrawn, so I'm going to allow the question. Were you here when the withdrawn stipulation was initially entered into?
I don't recall hearing that.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, to be clear, according to you, your knowledge and your investigation, your review of the videos in this case, after leaving the scene following the altercation at around 10:17 p.m., Mr. Ephron returned to the scene at around 11:09 p.m., correct?
Somewhere thereabouts around that time.
Right. 52 minutes later, more or less.
Yes, sir.
And you got that from watching the videos, right?
Correct.
Okay. The video that was played in court on November 8th, correct?
Yes, sir.
To you, that was Mr. Ephron, correct?
It was consistent with what he stated and what he identified, consistent throughout the incident and returning thereafter.
Right. It's consistent that he told law enforcement that he returned to where the shooting occurred approximately an hour later and picked up 2 shell casings.
Correct.
And according to that video, after returning to the scene, Mr. Ephron leaves at about 11:11 p.m.
Roughly thereabouts. He's there for a couple minutes.
Okay. Now, consistent with all the video footage recovered by law enforcement in this case relating to this incident, that's the only time that Mr. Ephron returns to the scene that day.
As far as from the video that I observed and we recovered, yes.
And you observed all the video in this case that was recovered, right?
Correct.
Okay. Before Mr. Ephron returned to the scene some 52 minutes later after the incident, law enforcement had arrived, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, the police arrived at the scene at about 18 minutes after the incident.
Yes, roughly.
Okay. And the police were at the scene for approximately 10 minutes, more or less?
I don't recall the extent of the time they were there for a few minutes.
Okay. So you don't know how long they were actually at the scene for?
I couldn't tell you exactly now.
Okay, you watched that body cam footage, right?
Yes, I reviewed it.
And while they were there, the police searched the area of the altercation. You saw that in the body cam footage, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there were at least 7 officers there?
I don't recall how many officers there were.
Multiple officers?
There were more than 2, yes.
Do we have that body cam footage ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, Your Honor, I'm gonna mark this as
It's still defense exhibit
E. It's still defense exhibit E.
E, and it's identified, Your Honor, it's identified on exhibit E as shots _fired_NEOC.
Thank you.
Detective, instead of trying to harken back on your recollection, let's just take a quick look at that video, okay?
Okay.
And specifically,
for the record.
Your Honor, the time noted on the upper right-hand portion of the screen is 22:40:43.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's only a portion of the spotty cam footage, as you know. Well, right there, you can see how many officers?
Looks like at least 6.
At least 6.
Plus the person who's wearing black.
What's that?
Plus the person wearing
Right.
black.
Right, and that would be 7, right?
Correct.
Those the-
What I see in the photo is 6, the 7th would be the person wearing.
We're in the body cam.
Correct.
Okay, so 7 officers, okay.
Okay. We'll show the whole time.
Yeah. We're gonna back up a little bit now. I just want to get the number of officers there, so we have 7 with these seen on video.
And the time reflected here, Your Honor, is 22:35:57.
Thank you.
Now, again, this is about 18 minutes after the incident. You have 7 officers on the scene, and what are they doing on the scene?
They're canvassing, looking down towards the ground,
With what?
flashlights.
With flashlights,
Correct.
right? And they're searching for something, right?
Correct.
What do you think they're searching for?
For any evidence.
Speculation.
Okay, let me not, I'll withdraw that. What are they searching for?
And Your Honor, the video would speak for itself as far as how many officers there are at any given moment.
Well, it does once it's shown.
Right.
I'm sorry, what was your last question? What do you think
What-
they're canvassing for?
What are they searching for?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Okay. Anyway, you see, let's do this, let's be specific. You see the officers walking around the scene where the alleged incident was with flashlights on the ground, correct?
Correct.
Not up in the air, not in houses, on the ground,
Correct.
indicating they're looking for something on the ground.
Yes.
Okay.
And it stopped at 22:36:58.
And we're done with it, Nora. Okay, Tim, thank you very much for your patience on that. Law enforcement did not locate any casings or signs of a shooting during that search.
That's correct.
And despite there being at least 7 officers who responded to the scene, not one officer took any notes or prepared any reports regarding that response.
Objection calls for discovery and relevance.
Relevance?
Court's going to allow the detective to answer.
No, there were no reports other than their daily log of the officers keep related to calls that are generated from the responding to radio calls.
Right, so that's a logbook where they say we're responding to Selma or whatever.
Correct.
Okay. Do you know why no reports were generated? Do you know?
I don't believe they encountered any of the victims or any of the direct witnesses to the crime, so there was nothing to document at the time.
Okay. So after they left, after the police left, Mr. Ephron then returns to the scene at 11:09.
Correct.
Okay. And as shown on the video, Mr. Ephron, without a flashlight and by himself, supposedly located the casings within 2 minutes,
Correct.
according to him.
Within the period of time that he was there. I'm
Right.
not sure exactly 2 minutes or what the time was, but
Short period of time, right?
correct.
According to him.
Yes.
And while there, Mr. Ephron claims he videotaped the shell casings.
Objection, it's not a question and
Not a question.
relevance.
Well, I think it was a question. Everything I'm doing is a question. There was a question mark at the end.
There was, I believe there was a video that you showed, wasn't there,
Yes.
of the shell casings in the street?
Yeah, my understanding of what Mr. Tacopina said was Mr. Ephron claimed he shot a video at the location. There's no question there. That's a statement by Mr. Tacopina.
Okay, hold on. Mr. Ephron claimed to have shot a video at the scene of the shell casings. Correct. What was that question?
Counsel, I'm not going to allow you to engage in that conduct with Mr. Preslonik.
Okay, I'd like the same respect, though, Your Honor, from Mr. President.
Well, I
as
think
well.
he is being respectful both to you and to the court.
Well,
So,
suggest that that wasn't a question.
and you just interrupted the court, so
And I
you're clearly
apologize.
not being respectful of the court right now.
You're right,
So
Your Honor, I
I'm gonna
apologize.
Ask that you tone yourself down, way down.
Sure, way down.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Well, now that I made that a question, could I have an answer?
You can answer.
Thanks.
Yes, there was a video that I reviewed.
Again, that Mr. Ephron claims he took at the scene of the shell cases.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. law enforcement recovered two portions of a video from 1616 Vista Del Mar. Right?
Two files.
Yeah,
correct.
right. The first one starts at 22:10 and ends at 22:30 and 01, meaning it starts at like 10:10 p.m. and ends at 10:30.
Correct.
And that's the video portion that captures the altercation itself.
That's correct.
Okay. And the second portion of the video starts at 2300, meaning about 11 p.m., and ends at 23:19:59 seconds, meaning around 11:20.
Yes,
Okay. And that's the portion that captures Mr. Ephron returning to the scene.
that's correct.
Okay. What law enforcement did not recover and preserve, however, was the video in between those two portions, meaning the video from the scene from 1616 Vista Del Mar from 10:30 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Correct.
Okay. And that video would have shown the police responding to the scene, for example.
Yes,
It also would have captured any other person that may have appeared on the scene after the police left,
yes.
before the 11 p.m. video.
Correct.
Okay. And because you don't have that missing video, you don't know if anyone, including Mr. Ephron, came back to the scene during that 30-minute window between 10:30 and 11 p.m.
That's correct.
Did anyone from law enforcement, to your knowledge, ever watch the video from 1616 Vista Del Mar that would have covered the period from 10:30 to 11 p.m.?
Yes,
So someone watched it.
yes,
Who? You?
yes.
But you didn't recover it?
And there was nothing there to recover.
What does that mean?
There was nothing there that I saw that was captured anything related to the crime.
So you, well, at that point, how'd you know if anything was related to the crime?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
I'll withdraw that. I'll re-ask her. Well, what was captured on the video from 10:30 to 11 p.m.?
I mean, there was nothing there to the point where Mr. Ephron showed up, or we believe to be Mr. Ephron, where he began the search, and he ultimately, consistent with what he said about collecting 2 casings from the street.
So you actually watched the video from 10:30 to 11, but didn't recover it?
Correct.
Okay. And in that video, Detective, were any human beings captured on the video?
I don't recall from that period, that half-hour period.
Did you make a report regarding the observation of that video?
No.
Okay. Now, you just said that that video between 10:30 and 11 that you watched but did not recover, correct?
Correct.
Had no relevant evidence to the investigation.
Nothing that I saw, sir, that was inconsistent with Mr. Ephron or anything else that would have affected.
But what, okay, and I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes,
I asked you if any human beings or any people were on that video, and your answer was what?
I said nothing outside of what we knew as far as what occurred initially, and then ultimately when the officers responded, and having the body-worn video from the officers to fill in that gap, and then everything subsequent to that when Mr. Ephron returned.
But certainly on that video between 10:30 and 11 p.m. that you viewed but didn't recover, the police responded and were looking for something and found nothing, right?
Correct. And we have that with the,
With the body cam.
correct.
So that's why you didn't recover, because you already had that with the body cam.
Correct, we have a better view of
Fair
what
enough.
they observed. yes.
Fair enough. By the way, on the video that was recovered, camera 3 from 6200 Hollywood Boulevard, it showed someone on a skateboard traveling south on Vista Del Mar, right to left at about 10:17.
Correct.
Okay. And as shown on the video, he stops at 10:18 in the same location where the altercation occurred.
I believe he stops closer to the intersection at Selma, which would be just south of that, correct?
Okay. And he bends down in that location and remains there for about 16 seconds, right?
I don't recall that, sir. I
Okay.
don't have that from memory.
That's okay, we'll play it for you.
Okay.
Your Honor, while we're teeing this up, at some point, could I just have a 2-minute break to the restroom?
Yes, is this also from Defense F?
Your Honor, it's from Defense Exhibit E, and for the record, it is identified on that thumb drive is the magic video that ends with the digits 3000.
Thank you. So do you wish a moment now or after the viewing of the video?
Maybe let's view the video first, and then I'll just need 2 minutes.
That's fine.
Thanks, Your Honor, I appreciate it. Okay, we'll take a look.
Here you go.
Aaron, do you mind if I approach just so I can read the timestamps?
That's
Yeah,
fine.
thank you. For the record, it's 22:17:51 right now, and it's playing.
Don't you want to go to 22,
22:18:04.
Oh, okay.
And here it comes. Okay, stopping at 22:18:21.
So we'll take a 5-minute break
Thank you, Your Honor, I appreciate it.
and recess for 5 minutes.
Break.
Of course.
So as shown on that video, Detective, you see the skateboarder stop at about 10:18 in the same location, close to the same location where the altercation occurred.
Correct.
And according to that video, he stayed there for about 16 seconds.
Several seconds, yes.
Okay. You don't know actually what he did while he stopped, right?
No.
I mean, for all you know, he could have put something on the ground or tipped something up the ground, right?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Law enforcement did have occasion to speak to that skateboarder, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, on the body cam?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't know his name, though, or any of his information, correct?
I do know.
Okay. In fact, you have no way of getting in touch with him, or had no way of getting in touch with him after the incident and reviewing any of the video, correct?
Correct.
In any event, you've never been able to determine what he was doing at that location when he stopped?
I do know.
Okay. Now, you saw an arrest warrant for Mr. Mayers on April 13, 2022.
Yes, sir.
And to be clear, law enforcement received Mr. Ephron's complaint about 5 months earlier, November 8th, 2021.
Correct.
And you, along with Detective Camacho Menifee, spoke to Mr. Ephron again at length on November 9th, 2021?
That was the initial point?
Yes, yes, sir. Okay. And law enforcement received, you've testified this already, those two 9mm shell casings on November 8th, 2021?
Correct.
For the record, you just have to say yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm waiting for you to finish.
Oh, sorry. And law enforcement reviewed and received all that video surveillance you've been testifying about this morning from 1616 Vista Del Mar on November 9th, 2021.
Yes.
Vista Del Mar, okay. And you also received and reviewed the video surveillance from 6200 Hollywood Boulevard on November 18th, 2021.
Correct.
And on November 10th, law enforcement obtained authorization to conduct a search for a T-Mobile information relating to ASAP Ills or Elijah Ulanga's cell phone number.
Correct.
And that's ASAP Ills, by the way, correct?
Yes.
And the T-Mobile information law enforcement obtained authorization to search ASAP Ill's call detail records and GPS location data.
Yes.
And those records showed ASAP Ill's cell phone near Selma Avenue in Vista Del Mar at approximately 10:12 p.m.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of his expertise last foundation.
The question is just whether or not it shows
The records he reviewed, yeah.
the phone at that location, not whether it was interpreted
Correct, you are.
in any way. The court's allowing it. Was there an answer?
Yes, I believe that's my recollection. It's been a while since I reviewed that portion,
Okay.
that they were consistent with that area.
Okay, just for your, if you need to, it's Exhibit 14 in my little book I gave you there.
Okay.
This has all that information I'm asking about right now. I'm not trying to trick you. Anyway, those records also showed ASAP Ill's cell phone near Mr. Mayor's residence at about 11 p.m.
Correct.
that night. Okay. In addition, Mr. Ephron consented to have his cell phone or law enforcement conduct a dump, so to speak, on his cell phone as well.
Yes.
And the information on that phone confirmed Mr. Ephron's communications with Mr. Mayers, ASAP Ills, and ASAP 12E, which is Mr. Phillips.
That's correct.
And as of November 2021, law enforcement had Mr. Ephron's statement,
Yes.
had cell phone records as of November 2021.
I can't recall the exact time we got the cell phone records back in its entirety,
Take a look at Exhibit 14 if that'll help you a little bit.
but that is, it's consistent, sir.
Okay. By November 2021, you had video of the incident
Correct.
and you had 2 shell casings.
Correct.
But you still waited another 5 months until April 2022 to arrest Mr. Mayers.
Objection argumentative.
It's not an argument, I'm asking.
You can answer.
Correct, yes.
Okay, why?
We wanted to run our investigation as thoroughly as we could and work out the logistics to arrange for the arrest ultimately. And Mr. Myers was, at that point in time, traveling. He was outside of the state at various times, so there was different logistics involved.
For 6 months?
Yes, sir?
Okay. Well, what additional evidence after November 2021, if any, did law enforcement recover to use against Mr. Mayers?
From that point on, no, nothing else, but everything that was recovered to be evaluated. It took time, even looking through the video, going through it painstakingly, reviewing it.
The videos that we just saw in court today?
Correct.
Well, it didn't take you 5 months to review that,
No.
right? It took only 4 minutes.
Objection argumentative.
Okay.
Sustained.
In assessing whether probable cause existed in this case, Detective, law enforcement primarily looked at the video of the incident, witness statements, particularly that of Mr. Ephron.
Objection of relevance to his determination of probable cause.
Sustained.
With regard to the video of the incident, after reviewing the footage, which captured the incident from the 1616 Visa Del Mar, law enforcement prepared a document entitled Video Download Information Summary. And that's Exhibit 21 in that book if you want to take a
Correct.
look.
Yes.
Okay. And in that document, law enforcement, Your Honor, do you have a book as well?
I do.
You do? Okay, so it's 21. And in that document, law enforcement described what it could observe in the footage.
Correct.
For example, law enforcement described what appears to be a struggle in the street at 22:17 and 11 seconds.
Your Honor, I'm just going to object to the form of the question if we're asking about his personal observations, but phrasing it as law enforcement observed
Okay,
is not
Sustained.
relevant.
sure.
Rephrase,
Example.
rephrase, please.
For example, you saw what appeared to be, based on this report to refresh your recollection if you need, you saw what appeared to be a struggle on the street at about 22:17 and
That's
11
right.
seconds. Okay. And you detailed approximate distances.
Approximately,
Yeah.
based on the camera.
Of course. And obviously you listed various times of various events seen on the video
Correct.
based on the video timestamp, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you described that the subject was in a dark colored jacket or sweater.
Correct.
Obviously, when preparing the summary, you wanted to document anything that was observed in the video which you considered important in respect to the case.
Your Honor, I'm just object to the forms of these questions based on a summary of the video that's already played. The video would speak for itself.
David?
Yes, however, the last question isn't one that speaks directly to the video, but rather that it's a summary.
object, I mean, I would still object to the relevance of the detective's summary of the video.
Just answer the question, please. The court's allowing it.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat your question?
Sure.
You wanted to document.
Thank you, Your Honor, thank you. In preparing the report, Detective, you wanted to document anything that was observed on the video which was considered important with respect to the case, obviously.
Anything that notes from the video would be important, actions, number of people, yes,
Right, that's what this is. This is the video download information and summary, right?
correct.
And clearly, as part of the investigation, if a gun or shooting were observed on the video from 1616 Vista Del Mar, that's something that you would have documented in a summary.
Yes,
But this summary does not document that a shooting was observed, right?
it does not.
In fact, the summary doesn't even document that a gun was observed, correct?
No,
No,
No, it does not.
it does not document that a gun was observed on that video from 1616 Vista Del Mar.
And in addition to the summary of the video which was prepared, you described what the surveillance footage from Vista Del Mar captured in a statement of probable cause that was submitted in a search warrant on April 13, 2022, correct?
Objection to relevance.
sustained.
Your Honor, I don't know if I could ask this. I'm not trying to run afoul of the court's question, but I'll ask, court's ruling, but I'll ask it, and if you want me to move on, I will.
Thank you.
In connection with the search warrant affidavit, you wanted to lay out as many facts as you could to establish probable cause.
Objection to relevance.
Sustained.
Okay. Okay, back to this summary here. When describing what the video surveillance captured, it was only sworn that one individual in dark clothing is seen extending. You know what? Withdrawn, Your Honor. Withdrawn. Okay, one last question on this. In the search warrant affidavit, you did not say that the video of the incident even showed anyone probably firing a weapon, correct?
In that specific video, no,
No. And that's the video where the alleged firing happened, right?
that portion.
Right. So as it stands, to summarize this whole document, you've recovered no video whatsoever showing that Mr. Mayers fired a weapon.
I'm not sure I understand that question
Okay.
specifically. In totality, between the video collection, the audio,
No.
or that
Is there a
specific
video?
video to 1616 Vista Del Mar?
I'm sorry.
Your Honor, can the detective be allowed to finish his?
Yeah, that's why I said I was sorry.
Yes, and Joanne's making faces, that means she didn't get that, and she's upset. So please allow the witness to finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Joanne, restate the question, please.
Is there a video?
No, as it stands, in summary, you received no video
No.
showing the defendant firing a
So
weapon.
as it stands, to summarize this whole document, we recovered no video whatsoever showing Mr. Mayers fired a weapon.
Answer, please.
Yes, ma'am. And specifically to relate to 1616, there is nothing clear that shows it collectively, my opinion.
I'm not asking for your opinion.
Okay.
I asked you a very specific question.
Specifically to 1616, nothing that definitively shows.
Right. And in fact, that's where the alleged shooting happened on that video, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You conducted an extensive search of Mr. Mayor's residence on April 20th, 2022.
Correct.
And during the search, law enforcement did not recover a 9mm firearm.
Correct.
In fact, it was part of your investigation you learned that Mr. Mayers was licensed to possess firearms.
Correct.
And none of them were 9mm caliber weapons.
Nothing, no handgun 9mm recovered.
Okay. Do you know what firearms were registered to Mr. Mayers?
I believe there was a revolver. I can't remember the caliber.
Okay. By the way, as the assigned detective in this case, did you ever look to see what firearms were registered to Mr. Ephron?
I believe I did.
And?
I don't recall identifying any of the initial period of the investigation.
Well, forget about the initial period. As you sit here today, some 3 years later,
Objection relevance.
did you ever
What's
identify?
11?
Did you ever identify what firearms were registered to Mr. Ephron?
At the time, no.
When you say at the time, what do you mean by that?
At the time that we initiated this investigation,
Yeah.
I don't recall identifying any guns that were registered to Mr. Ephron.
Okay, but now we're here today. I'm saying up until today, have you since learned what guns were registered to Mr. Ephron?
No,
It might be relevant what guns he has as of today.
Sustained.
Well, so did you, let's go back for a second. So you never found out which weapons were registered to Mr. Ephron?
at the time,
Objection calls for
Yes, at the
discovery.
time.
Objection calls for discovery and relevance.
Well, was it important in your investigation to determine if Mr. Ephron possessed firearms?
Objection relevance and calls for discovery.
Sustained.
Did you ever ask Mr. Ephron if he had firearms back in November of 2021?
not specifically, I do recall we asked him if he was armed that night, and he said no.
Okay. But you didn't ask him if he possessed firearms back in 2021?
Possessed, I don't understand your question, sir. Is possessed as in he had them at his residence back in New York, or?
Did he own firearms, detective?
Objection relevance.
Sustained.
In addition to relying on video evidence to make out this case, you also considered the statements of Mr. Ephron, obviously.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when considering whether an offense occurred, it's important consideration for you as a detective, whether the complainant is truthful.
Yes,
Okay. And in determining whether a complainant is truthful, you consider whether his statements are consistent
yes,
and whether his statements are corroborated by other evidence.
correct.
Or whether the complainant has a bias against the defendant. That's things for you to consider, correct?
So tell
Object
me,
to the relevance of these forms of questions is it be the court's decision to evaluate his credibility, not the detective's.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Could I respond to that objection?
No, the court will make a ruling. While you're correct, the court determines bias for purposes of probable cause for a holding to answer in preliminary hearing. The detective can consider that for purposes of determining whether or not he's going to move forward. So the court will allow it.
Anyway, did you say yes to that as well, right? That would be one of the factors.
the totality of everything.
Sure. And with regards to his statements, Mr. Ephron first reported this incident to the police on November 8th, 2021.
Correct.
He didn't call 911. He didn't go to the police on November 6th when it happened, 2021, right?
Correct.
He waited 2 days before reporting this incident to law enforcement.
Correct.
In fact, even before going to the police in this case, Mr. Ephron first contacted a civil attorney named Brian Hurwitz.
Objection calls for speculation.
There's no speculation called for.
The court does not think that's relevant. Next question, please.
Okay. Well, in Exhibit 14, you prepared a report. I think it's a report. Hold on a second. Yeah, it's one of the follow-up investigation reports in this case. It was obviously important for you to note that Mr. Ephron had consulted with an attorney before going to the police, correct?
Objections, the court's already found is not relevant. Same objection.
Sustained.
During the investigation, you and Detective Menifee and Detective Camacho, and met with the detective, is it Clanton or Clayton?
I believe it was Clayton.
Clayton.
I did not meet with him. I was there for that meeting.
Oh, okay. Did you ever speak, you, to a lawyer for Mr. Ephron?
Objection of relevance?
Sustained.
You were here on November 8th during the preliminary hearing, and you heard Mr. Ephron testify that he never told the police he contacted his attorney, Brian Hurwitz, immediately after the incident.
Objection to the form of the question.
Sustained.
Your Honor, can I just get clarity on when you say the form?
Yes, it's just the naming of the attorney. Is that what your objection is?
Yes, and to him just testifying to what the victim already testified to.
Your Honor, this isn't
So-
impeachment, it's cross, right?
Were you here when the victim testified that he did not tell the police he had contacted an attorney before contacting the police? Do you recall that?
I don't know.
Thank you.
On November 8th, were you here?
Yes, sir, I was here.
Were you listening?
I was here, sir. Like I explained, I was in and out of the conference.
Anyway, moving past the attorney conversation we were about to have, you secured Mr. Ephron's cell phone records from the night of the incident, November 6, 2021.
Correct.
And that incident happened at about 10:17 p.m. and lasted about 25 seconds. Based on the video, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And again, not to be repetitive, but to put in context my next question, Mr. Ephron returned to the scene at 11:09 p.m.
Yes, sir.
And between 10:17 p.m. and 11:09 p.m., Mr. Ephron's phone records, if you could answer this, Your Honor, I'm not trying to run afoul of the court's ruling, I'm just warning you, I'm going to ask a question. The phone records that you received and reviewed between 10:17 p.m. and 11:09 p.m. did not show a single call between Mr. Ephron and an attorney, correct?
I don't recall that they did, sir.
Okay. When you say you don't recall it, it's Exhibit 6 if you want to take a quick look and see if it helps refresh your recollection a
I
little bit.
can.
You can or cannot?
I can.
Okay.
I'll review it, my recollection or recollection.
You may.
Just take a look, and when you're ready, just look up at me, Detective.
Your Honor, object to the relevance of this question as well.
Sustained.
Well, don't bother looking anymore, Detective. I got canceled on that one, so. You'd agree as a seasoned detective, how many years, 27?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. As a 27-year detective, you'd agree when conducting an investigation of an alleged shooting, you wouldn't want anyone moving evidence or taking evidence from the scene that's not a law enforcement officer, correct?
I wouldn't want it, but I can't control.
No,
the
I'm
evidence coming.
not trying to blame you, okay? My question was this. Investigation, you saw that he sent a text message to Mr. Mayor's manager, John, saying, I'm gonna get itch, right?
Correct.
Okay. And when you saw that, what did you take that to mean?
Objection calls for speculation and relevance.
Sustained as to each.
And that text message to John, the manager for ASAP Rocky, by Mr. Ephron, was sent, aside from I'm gonna get itch, was sent with a photograph of his scraped knuckles and a video of the shell casings, right?
That's correct.
Can we take 1 second, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor,
See if we need it. We can see if we need it.
sorry, I was trying to help them with the Elmo, but it's just too much in stereo. focus on this as well. My apologies.
That's fine.
You're aware, in investigating this case, Detective Flores, that Mr. Ephron's attorneys contacted Mr. Mayer's attorneys on April 21 of 2022, only a day after Mr. Mayer was arrested, to discuss a civil settlement relating to Mr. Ephron's claims.
Objection
He's
calls
aware.
for speculation
He does.
and lacks foundation and relevance.
Sustained.
On which ground, Your Honor? Well,
Yes.
so I could fix it if if I knew the grounds.
It's irrelevant, so I don't know that fixing it would help anything, Your Honor.
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant for what purpose, Your Honor? To me, it's relevant if someone asks for money in exchange for a resolution of a criminal matter. To me, it's relevant. It's not
Okay,
relevant.
the court's already ruled previously that whether or not there are civil attorneys involved and the complaining witness contacted his attorney within a day or the day of or the next day is not relevant to the court's finding of whether or not there's probable cause to hold your client to answer.
Okay, Your Honor, and my response with all respect to you, I promise you, it's just this. I agree with what you just said, but the police are in possession of an affidavit where it's not just trying to resolve a civil case, it's saying they will resolve a civil case and that will impact the criminal case. They basically said settle the civil case and the criminal case will go away. That's in an affidavit that the police have. That's all I'm asking about.
Court's made a ruling.
Okay, thank you. Based on your experience, well, let me withdraw that, based on the court's ruling. Okay, you're aware, and we're getting close to the end, okay? You're aware that Mr. Ephron claimed he initially noticed Mr. Mayers had a gun when Mr. Mayers first approached him near that parking lot.
Just object as vague as to time, Your Honor.
He said in the parking lot.
Right.
He also said when he first approached him, so I don't.
The first time they approached each other, that day.
I wasn't sure if he was talking about as the defendant approached on the street or as they came together right in front of the parking lot. Just wanted to be specific with the time that we're talking about.
Can you be a little more specific, please?
I said the parking lot, I don't know. Do you remember, here, I'll do this, how about this? Can I have those exhibits you used today? All right, right here. Here. This is exhibit 14D from the people, Lorna.
Yes, but I don't know if the envelope's working. But you can try.
I'll just do this. Huh?
That's fine.
When Mr. Mayers approached Mr. Ephron here, in this part here, he claimed he saw a gun on him, correct?
At some portion during the initial encounter, yes.
That's right, thank you. And during that initial encounter, he said he not only saw a gun on him, he said that Mr. Mayers pointed it at his chest and or stomach, right?
Correct.
And then, according to Mr. Ephron, Mr. Mayers put the gun away. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And after this interaction, Mr. Ephron didn't run away from Mr. Mayers, right?
Correct.
To the contrary, after this initial interaction where Mr. Ephron claimed Mr. Mayers pointed a gun at him, Mr. Ephron followed Mr. Mayers, right?
That's correct.
In fact, according to Mr. Ephron, he was so angry with Mr. Mayers that Mr. Ephron was telling him a lot of things as they continued to walk eastbound on Argyle to Selma.
Eastbound on Selma from Argyle, correct.
Right. And, for example, according to your investigative report, Exhibit 10 if you want it, despite claiming that Mr. Mayers pulled the gun on him, Mr. Ephron followed Mr. Mayers, bragging about how he had accomplished so much. Correct?
Correct.
And you actually asked Mr. Ephron why he continued to follow Mr. Mayers if he knew he had a gun, right?
Correct.
Because that would seem an odd thing to do, no?
Yes, wouldn't seem to norm, but not completely unusual.
And certainly, What did you say the first word? It wouldn't seem normal?
Not completely abnormal.
Okay. Well, you asked him, why would you follow someone that just pointed a gun at you who's walking away from you? Why would you follow him, right?
Correct.
And when you asked him that question, Mr. Ephron said he didn't know why, right?
I don't think he initially put it in words or explained it.
Well, let's go to your report. Exhibit 10, page 4, paragraph 5. And if you need, I can come direct your attention to it. It's the top third of the page. You see it, Detective?
I can see.
Okay. So, to refresh your recollection, if this does, when you asked Mr. Ephron why he followed Mr. Mayers if he knew he had a gun, Mr. Ephron said he didn't know why, but he wanted him to hear what he had to say.
Yes, sir.
Certainly you'd agree that the actions by Mr. Ephron would seem to suggest he wasn't afraid of Mr. Mayers even after seeing the gun.
I don't know exactly.
Calls for speculation and relevance, right?
It's the same.
During his testimony at the preliminary hearing and into one of your interviews as well, Mr. Ephron testified that when they reached the corner, Mr. Phillips, or ASAP 12E, jumped off the curb, and that's when he claims Mr. Mayers shot. Right?
Yes.
Did you understand that? Did I ask that a little?
At the point that they're walking, continuing to describe how events unfolded.
Okay. Again, you've already testified that there's nothing, no evidence in that video of a gun being discharged, but what it does show is that Mr. Ephron appears to be struggling with Mr. Ills, or Mr. Ills, ASAP Ills, right?
Yes.
And you agree Mr. Ephron is much larger than Mr. Ulanga, or that's ASAP Ills?
I don't know their size differential. They appear pretty similar.
Pretty similar? Well, how much does Mr. Ephron weigh?
I don't know. I estimate here that he's probably 200 pounds.
Okay. And do you know how much Mr. Ulanga weighs?
I don't.
Okay.
Based on, again, just from the video, they appear to be similar body type.
Okay. You never spoke to Mr. Ulanga, right?
No.
Okay. And you're aware that Mr. Ephron has prior convictions for crimes of violence in New York?
Objection, Your Honor, form of the question and relevance, and lacks foundation on the part of this witness.
Lacks foundation. He did a search, this
What?
witness.
What was the question going to be?
He's asking him about the victim's prior criminal history.
I said that he was aware that the victim has prior convictions for crimes of violence. That's the question.
And what's your objection?
That it lacks foundation and would call for hearsay, is irrelevant. He wasn't the one who investigated any of those crimes. It would all be based on hearsay or his knowledge of New York criminal law.
You know, it would be based on a nicer report,
Did
a business record.
did the complaining witness tell you that he had convictions for crimes of violence?
I don't recall him talking about his prior criminal history.
Did you ask him?
I don't recall if he asked or not.
But you did seek and receive his criminal rap sheet, right?
We ran everybody involved, we recorded everybody involved, including Mr. Myers.
And did you ever ask Mr. Ephron about the convictions that you learned about?
I don't recall asking him any specifics.
I think as you said earlier, inconsistencies in the complainant's account is something you'd consider in assessing credibility? Yes?
Yes.
Now, you know that Mr. Ephron testified that he never said that he saw Mr. Ulanga or ASAP Ills armed with a knife when he first to the police on November 8, 2021.
Objection to the form of the question, to what the victim testified to. Also, the detective's already testified that he's gone in and out, so it lacks foundation if that was something that he specifically heard.
Did he hear any? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Were you here when there was testimony to the effect that the complaining witness indicated initially that he never saw Ills with a knife?
Yes.
Okay. And that's what he told the police. He never saw Ills with a knife when he first reported the incident on November 8, 2021, right?
Correct.
Was that truthful testimony?
Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor.
It was.
Sustained.
Okay, well, it was sustained anyway. But how about this? When Mr. Ephron first reported the incident on November 8th, 2021, he in fact said he saw ASAP. Can I finish my question? I mean, I know you get very offended when I do that, so I just want to ask.
Let him finish the question before you make the objection.
It's just based on the way he's already worded the question, Your Honor, it's multiple levels of hearsay. He's asking him about what the victim said to another police officer as it was documented in a report that he's now going to ask this witness a question about.
See, I'll reread that question, Your Honor. It was not that at all.
You still interrupted him, and the rules of court require that you wait until the question is asked before you interpose an objection. So that's on you, and then you argue with the court. So what we're going to do is, since it's almost noon, we're going to break and return at 1:30.
Well, Your Honor, I literally have a few more minutes, but if you want it, I'll do whatever obviously the court wants, but I think we can be done here in 5 minutes.
Your Honor, and I was just trying to interpose the objection when I heard the objectionable part, but I respect the court's ruling. I will reserve my objection until he finishes his question, and then I will do it.
We're still going to have to return because he has more questions, and then you're probably going to want to ask questions, and then there's going to be arguments. So we're not going to conclude by noon in any event. So we'll adjourn a few minutes early and resume promptly at 1:30. All parties are ordered back promptly.